The Deepstone Crypt has been defeated many times, and today I'm going over the entire raid from start to finish in 10 minutes or less. Here we go. The beginning of the raid has you and your fire team racing with sparrows through a cold blizzard where visibility is minimal. Your goal is to get through all 6 heat bubbles and kill the brick bosses at the final bubble, which will then unlock the door to progress to the first real encounter. While driving your Sparrow through the storm, you will get a debuff called Frostbite, which will stack to 10 before killing you. Staying inside a heat bubble will reduce this debuff all the way down to 0, where it's then safe to progress with your Sparrow. Here's a map of the pathway from Reddit. No idea who to give credit to, so I'm just saying Reddit in general. Have fun and see you on the other side. Once through the door, continue sparrowing until you reach the entrance of the Deepstone Crypt. Enter the crypt and follow the pathway to the right to get to the first encounter. Now that you're here, let's talk about basic mechanics. First and foremost though, this encounter has overload champions, so be sure at least 2 people have this mod equipped. The area is split into 3 sections: the light room, dark room, and basement. Make sure 1 overload mod user is in the light room and 1 is in the dark room because overloads spawn on each side. This encounter introduces an important mechanic called augmentation terminals. We'll continue to use these terminals throughout the entire raid, so please make sure to get used to them because they are fundamental. There are 3 of them in this encounter in total, 1 in each section of this encounter, which allows you and your fire team to swap buffs with each other by either placing or grabbing a buff. If you have an active buff on you, you can place it in the terminal and it'll present itself at all 3 terminals until one teammate decides to pick it up. You can even pick up from a teammate at the same terminal that it was placed into. This is how you swap your buffs for the entirety of the raid. There are 3 different kinds of buffs: a red buff called Operator, a yellow buff called Scanner, and a blue buff called Suppressor. Only one player can have each buff at a time, and after a while they're going to have to swap their buffs out with other players that have no buffs via the terminals. For this encounter, don't worry about Suppressor as it doesn't exist right now. These buffs generally do what their name implies. An operator will always operate objects, and it just so happens that that involves always shooting them. A scanner, on the other hand, will never shoot anything or interact with things. The only purpose of the scanner is to simply see objects on the map for the operator to shoot. Think of it like the Assassin's Creed Eagle Eye. The correct targets will glow gold, and it's the scanner's job to relay that information to the team and, more importantly, to the operator. On the light side and dark side of this area, there are 4 pillars, and underneath them there are glass floors. It's the scanner player's job to call out where the glowing number pad is in the basement of this encounter. This information should be relayed to the operator, allowing him to shoot the correct number pad in the basement. You should definitely go ahead and label these number pads, as they're going to be fundamental in terms of your callouts. Do this twice on your side, and then the scanner should swap their buff through the augmentation terminal so that the other side team can pick up the scanner buff and call out the other 2 keypads for the person downstairs with the operator buff. Once 2 keypads are shot on each side of the basement, it's time to shoot the main 6 columns, as their shields are now open and ready for damage. You'll have to shoot them in the order that the scanner in the basement calls out. Now, to get the scanner buff to the player in the basement, he's going to have to drop his operator buff into the terminal. Someone upstairs will pick it up, and then the scanner will drop their buff into the terminal, allowing the player in the basement to then pick up the scanner buff. Now, just behind the terminal in the basement where the scanner buff player is, there is a massive object which has 6 fuses at the top of it, 3 on the left side, 3 on the right side. Of course, that corresponds to 3 on the light side room and 3 on the dark side room. Simply go ahead and have the scanner call out if it's in the dark left, dark middle, or dark right, or if it's on the light side, call out light left, light middle, or light right. If you don't destroy all 6 in one phase, simply rinse and repeat this process once more, but using a different operator in the basement. Shooting the wrong core or fuse will cause them to glow red and wipe the fire team, so make sure that the person in the basement, the scanner, is calling out the correct yellow glowed fuse to the people upstairs that need to do damage. When the servitors spawn as well on each side of the rooms, kill them very quickly as they prevent the terminals from functioning, not just in this encounter, but that is something they do throughout the raid. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, ladies and gents. Moving on, this is the first boss fight in the raid. The same terminal mechanics apply here and the same two buffs, operator and scanner, are present. The boss shall create copies of himself. 4 in this room, which is located inside the crypt, and 4 in the space room. In the middle of the map where one of the bosses are present, you're going to notice that there's 4 space pods that shoot you up into space. They can also return back down to Europa with or without a guardian inside, as long as the person with the operator buff shoots the keypad for the shuttle to move either up or down. This encounter will play out, generally speaking, with 3 people in space and 3 people down here in the crypt. Kill Shanks as quickly as possible to spawn in these servitors, and once the servitors are spawned, kill them to start the DPS phase of this encounter. There are many DPS phases in this encounter, so please do not be worried when doing very little damage. Start off the fight by sending 2 players to space via the pods, and then once a 3rd player kills the operator buffed enemy, send him to space as well via the pod. The operator buffed player will stay in space for the entirety of this encounter. He actually does one of the most important jobs in this encounter, so have your strongest communicator as the operator role. 1 player in space and 1 player in the crypt shall take turns using, then sending the scanner buff to each other through the augmentation terminals. It's the scanner's job to call out which copy of the boss is the correct one to shoot. Do not shoot the wrong one, as that will wipe you and your fire team. You have a short 3-second window to do damage once you first shoot him initially. So coordinate as a team of 3. Heavy sword swings work great if you have a falling guillotine or the new exotic sword. Once one boss dies upstairs, quickly have the scanner transfer the buff to the scanner player in the crypt so that he can then see which boss is the correct one to shoot down in the crypt. You'll take turns killing a copy of a boss in space, then in Europa twice before one phase finishes. The mechanics aren't done just yet though. Once a boss copy dies, he drops his soul on the floor. Have any player except for the operator buff player pick it up. The reason for this is because operator is the only person that can also shoot the buff above the player's head when they have this soul debuff. Now, this soul debuff will kill a player after 45 seconds if it is not either cleansed or shot onto the floor. If you want to buy your teammates extra time, have the operator shoot the debuff above a player's head, and then the soul will drop to the floor. Once it's on the floor, the same player or a different player can go ahead and simply run over or walk over the soul, and that debuff will then be on that player. Additionally, the operator can then shoot one of the 4 doors in space by shooting the number pads on the doors. Then the player with the debuff can go inside of that room, and the operator can shoot the debuff above his head. This will cause the soul to actually get shot out into space, and of course the player will be cleansed. This all means that players who pick up the soul debuff will need to take a pod to space so that the operator can shoot their debuff off into space inside one of the 4 rooms. So if you pick one up downstairs in the crypt, you have to take a space pod up so the operator can work with you. Players with this soul debuff must communicate very clearly with the operator so that they don't die to their timer. Now, once you do this for a good solid 7 or 8 minutes, you're going to kill a lot of these boss copies, you're going to get to the health gate, and the boss will have a final stand mechanism. At this point, all 6 players should go up to space, and the scanner should call out which boss is the correct one for the entire team to shoot. There will be tons of these bosses in space, upwards of 8 of them, so make sure that the scanner can clearly communicate with the team. If you don't one-bang the boss, have the scanner call out where the second one is standing in the room. And again, make sure that everybody is ready to do DPS at the same time, because you do have a brief period of time where you can run up to the boss with swords and give your team a countdown of 3, 2, 1, and boom, you all bang it out with damage. And after that, congratulations, ladies and gents, you are now past this part and it should be smooth sailing. Next up, you're going to have a small jumping puzzle in space, but I won't waste my time here as it's as simple as following the path, not failing your jumps, and killing some ads. Enjoy the view though, as it's my favorite sandbox Bungie has probably ever made. In the third encounter, it's your job to defuse the nukes from hitting the Deepstone Crypt and destroying it. Instead, you're going to blow up the space station and crash land it back on Europa, where you'll fight the final boss. Drumroll please. Taniks. Yep. In this third encounter, you'll learn of the third blue buff called the Suppressor. Probably the easiest out of the 3 buffs, as it involves standing under balls and putting quite literally a single bullet into the boss to stun him. Stunning him under all 3 balls causes the nuclear reactors to go online, allowing nuclear cores to be deposited into them. There will be 4 locations where these nuclear cores can be stored in this encounter. They're all in the middle of the map. Now go ahead and label them however you like beforehand. My team used 1, 2, 3, 4. Now of course the scanner will once again have to call out which reactor to place the cores into. Placing it into the wrong reactor will cause death for the player placing the core. Go ahead and split teams into teams of 2. 2 scanners, 2 operators, and 2 suppressors. Make sure your team has some players using overload mods here, as overload captains do spawn pretty frequently. All buffs will drop from enemies, so make sure to pick them up and do your job. When the operator hears the security alarm, they must look for which reactor has a yellow light above it. Shooting the corresponding red keypad under the light unlocks the cores. The scanner must then call out which reactors are glowing yellow, so the people grabbing the cores can store them in the correct reactor. These cores will spawn when the operator's duties are finished. The reactors will also be offline until the suppressor player stuns the boss under all 3 of the balls. You'll know it's working because the boss will turn blue when you're standing underneath a ball, and you'll be able to do a little bit of damage. Literally any amount of damage will suffice to stun the boss, so make sure you're nice and quick here. Once 2 cores are placed, each buffed player should swap roles with their partner. So a new 3 players will have the buffs, and the people who just had the buffs should worry about the overloads and of course picking up and placing the cores in the correct spots. After 4 of these phases are done, you will have blown up the spaceship and it's crash landing back down into Europa. You'll drop down in a tunnel and run as fast as you can to the command deck. You'll spawn in a bunch of wreckage and exit the ship to the final encounter, which is the boss fight. The boss mechanics are more of the same, except much more grand because the area is large and there's many more placements for the cores and many more balls for the suppressor to stand under when suppressing. Once again, split up the teams into 2 and pick a partner. Choose a side of the map where a terminal is at, and this is where you're going to spend lots of your time killing ads and picking up your buffs. Suppressors should be by the crypt entrance, the scanners should be by the left side wall, and the operators should be closest to the ship crash site. Each team should kill ads quickly, including the captain and their buffed enemy, so that they can clear all the areas out and pick up their buff. Scanners should call out which reactors are glowing and ready for cores. Label them however you would like, but my team did numbers 1 to 6 going in a clockwise formation starting at the crashed ship. The boss will move to one of the 3 sides of the map and will take damage to its 4 legs. Only shoot 2 of them and 2 nuclear cores will drop once each leg explodes. Now have 2 players with no buffs pick up the cores and drop them into the correct reactors that the scanner called out. On their way to the reactors, they might become detained with a purple bubble, and actually it's not even a might, it happens guaranteed. It's the job of the operator to shoot the holes in the bubble to free the core runners right away so they can make the trip to the reactor without dying to radiation. Once you reach the ×10 debuff, you will instantly die and the core will drop on the floor. Now remember, you should pick up this core right away, because if you don't pick it up and place it right away, it's going to blow up and wipe your fire team after 10 seconds of it sitting on the floor. It's important to note that the suppressor must stun Taniks under all 3 balls on the boss side. Otherwise, the reactors will stay offline and the cores won't be able to be deposited by the core runners. One tip that I absolutely recommend following, and this is something that you should definitely take away from this video for the boss fight, is to make sure that both the core runners are picking them up at roughly the same time. Otherwise, you're going to run into a lot of problems with the operators running out of their buff when a core runner has a detainment shield around them. Once you finish dumping the 2 cores into their proper position, run back to your side and start swapping your buff with your partner. Kill all the ads, including the captain, and then get ready to shoot the other 2 legs of the boss that are not already broken. Simply rinse and repeat what you just did, except with your partners and the cores and the callouts and the suppression stuns, and you'll be ready for your first damage window. The boss spawns a massive vortex around him, so you should go ahead and time the debris or jump over it so that you're inside the vortex. Once you're inside the vortex, there's a belt of safe space that you can stand in without taking any damage. Now, after roughly 10 seconds, the boss will slam down with his hand and send everyone flying out of the vortex. You can time this slam and jump out of the vortex so that you can easily get back in and continue damaging a second time. If you let him slam you, you may hit the debris that is circling the vortex. I recommend using an anarchy with a heavy-duty sniper with firing line or triple tap and rapid hit. Nova bombs also work great, and if you could have a well of radiance or bubble for a damage buff, that would be great. One person running a divinity also works wonders, as the crit bubble spawns under the boss, then simply rinse and repeat a couple more times until the boss gets to his final stand. Once there, the boss will teleport to all the corners of the map for a total of 6 times before wiping your fire team. So if you want to count how many teleportations he does, make sure you do that in your head, because that will tell you when he's about to wipe your fire team. That's basically the entire encounter, folks. Pretty straightforward in terms of mechanics, but it's definitely going to take your team a few tries because it's very easy to die. If you can limit your deaths and start getting to the damage phases, you only need one more focused run to beat the boss. Good luck, and I hope this guide helped you guys out. For those wondering, my team finished it in 12 hours, which is definitely a little disappointing in my eyes, but I'm glad that we got the day 1 completion emblem. Thanks for watching, guys. If this helped you out in any way, shape, or form, a like rating would be very much appreciated. Subscribe for more daily Beyond Light content, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.